Welcome to Cuts Adda. As you might be aware, today is National Consumer Rights Day. And to discuss this important issue of consumer rights and consumer protection, we have with us Pradeep Mehta ji, the founder of Cuts. Mr. Mehta has been instrumental in formulation and strengthening of consumer rights and protection laws in the country. With more than 20 years of experience, he is well versed in this area. Mr. Mehta, please tell me the meat market for consumer rights during the 1980s, and what were the challenges that were faced by the consumers at the time, and what was the response you received from the government?
All right. Thank you very much, Urvashi. And the first of all, the significance of December 24th is important in terms of
Yes.
Consumer Protection Act 1986, when it was when it was assented to by the President of India. We have another
Yes.
consumer rights celebration across the world, which is the World Consumer Rights Day on 15th of March. In effect, I would say India has a double-decker bus to celebrate and observe consumer rights. We are far ahead of many other countries. Now, in 1980s, when at the time of Indira Gandhi and then followed by Rajiv Gandhi, we had the 20-point program of the government, where consumer protection was one of the 20-point programs of the government. Now, in order to give it some teeth or put some flesh on the bones, it was during Rajiv Gandhi's time that the Consumer Protection Act was conceptualized, and we were involved in the drafting of the same uh, to provide an easy redressal solution to consumers against the day-to-day problem that we had. Remember, Urvashi, those days it was the socialist era, where even to get a telephone connection was impossible.
Yes.
We could never dream of a mobile telephone those days.
True.
Or youngsters who are having mobile phones cannot imagine that you could not even make a telephone call because you didn't either have a telephone instrument or it did not work if you did have one. And that was the kind of socialist era. Rajiv Gandhi began the first economic reform in the country, I would say, though he's not being given that kind of credit. But he had to go, of course, tread slowly. And then he realized that it is important that if you're going to open the market to competition, it is important to provide better protection of consumers. The consumers will have to face more consumer abuses than what they did when it was mostly the state which was supplying goods and services. Say electricity, telecom, railways, three large state enterprises which were providing important services consumers were consuming on a day-to-day basis. In fact, when the Consumer Protection Act was debated, and there were a few judgments, orders against railways or telephones, they came up with even silly arguments that railways said these are not consumers, they are passengers. Telephone department, DOT, at that time said they are not consumers, they are subscribers. The kind of semantics which they played with. But anyway, that was all settled at that point of time. And by 1988, 1990, things really began to roll out in terms of setting up the consumer district fora, state commissions, and the national commission, one by one.
So, of course, the consumer protection law, in your view, you think it has benefited consumers, and to what extent? And how much do you think is the need for consumer, awareness about these consumer rights and the consumer laws in our country?
Right. Urvashi, let me speak about three positive outcomes and three negative factors. Of course, there are a host of them, but I thought this will uh, tell the viewer exactly as to what the highlights are.
Yeah.
Firstly, the paradigm has shifted. The paradigm has evolved. Sorry, used to be caveat emptor, to now it has now become caveat venditor, which is buyers beware to sellers beware. The act has been very effective. Government has put in a lot of publicity to publicize it. Now, not only that, there is a strong consumer movement in the country. And that has also helped to spread the word. Of course, you can call it's a half full glass, but it's not a half empty glass, as it were. I'm an optimist, so therefore I'm going to speak about the fact is that we still have miles to go, undoubtedly, but in a huge country with high illiteracy, whatever we've been able to do is fantastic. Now, when you talk in terms of awareness, Urvashi, what is important to understand is that people can understand through examples and not necessarily through literature that A plus B is equal to C. We have to show as to how A plus B is equal to C or whatever it is. And that we continue to show through various examples. And therefore, consumer groups themselves, and one of the biggest things which the Act has done is to provide an easy redressal avenue to consumers to be able to file their complaints and get a redressal. That is how the original intention was, and I'll come to it in terms of the negative factors as to what has happened and what has not happened. But what is often forgotten is, data is churned out by the government about the kind of complaints which have been resolved by the consumer disputes redressal machinery. What they do not capture in the data is the kind of redressal which consumer groups have been able to provide to consumers by advocacy, by conciliation, by purely, sort of talking. I'll give you an example. We got a compensation for a lady school teacher from Otis Elevator of 50,000 rupees without going to any consumer court, but just by using the threat of the law. As I say that, the stick is, often the fear of the stick often works far better than the stick itself. And therefore, there are many such cases which, as I said, have not been documented and probably difficult to document as such. Yes. But otherwise, I would put them to be, about nearly half as much as the dispute redressal machine is concerned. Thirdly, the biggest outcome of this is what is happening on a continuing basis is the improvement in the law. Now we have a new Consumer Protection Act, which was steered by the late Consumer Affairs Minister Ram Vilas Paswan in a very enthusiastic way, which deals with all the changes which are coming about. For example, e-commerce is something new. Not that the law did not cover e-commerce, but in order to clarify any of these issues, financial services, etc., all of which are developing so fast that the new law has been designed in a way that it has to be done. What the new law has also done is to establish a central consumer protection authority, which will deal with misleading advertising and deceptive claims. And the beauty about that law is that it will also hold the endorser liable. If Amitabh Bachchan is modeling for some particular item or good, and if there is something wrong in the good, you can haul Amitabh Bachchan also to the court. They are this sort of, so that there is more responsible advertising. There are three negative factors about the law. One is what has happened over the past is imposition of court fees, which we never had in mind when we drafted the Consumer Protection Act in 1984-85. And the courtization. Most of our consumer courts, intentionally we said we're not going to use the word court because people are scared of going to a court. So you use the Consumer Forum and State Commission and so on. But it has now, the whole machinery has become like another civil court structure. Even Government of India advertised civil consumer courts. When we objected, they said, look, ordinary people don't understand the difference between consumer courts and consumer forum. Fair enough. But that is a big tragedy that has happened. Court fees, etc. The second is the presence of lawyers. What has often happened is the cases are being adjourned irrationally again and again, and because of the presence of lawyers and usually the presiding officer always is a retired judge who has come up from the lawyers' ranks, by and large. And they are used to, scratching each other's back. Okay, you want an adjournment? Adjournment granted. Now, this, Urvashi, is in spite of the fact that we put in the law a time period ceiling, but we added the words as far as possible, which is as an exception to the rule. Now, what has happened is that has become the rule rather than the exception. And the third issue which is very important is, again, it's a part of the soft law provisions of the Consumer Protection Act, the establishment of the Consumer Protection Councils at the level of the union government, state government, and districts.
Yes.
What are they supposed to do? There are 6 consumer rights which have been recognized by the law.
Yeah.
They are supposed to promote and protect those rights. Now, of course, it's mainly these are talk shops, but even these talk shops help quite a lot. The new act, which has come in 2019, has been a result, a consequence of the deliberations which took place in the Central Consumer Protection Council. Now, unfortunately, PASFAN lost interest in the council. So after April 2017, not a single meeting of the Central Consumer Protection Council has taken place. Most, if not all, the state consumer protection councils are dormant. And what to talk about district consumer protection councils? God knows what is happening. Now that is to summarize my 3 bits good news and 3 bits bad news about the act implementation.
Yes. But like you said, that we should be optimistic and see that the glass is half full rather than half empty. So though
Right.
there are
Right, as you said, I mean, we continue to strive for it, and quite effectively, I would say. Now, of course, the effectiveness can only be proven by the results.
yes,
At least we are helping to ensure that the system doesn't backslide,
yes, absolutely.
which
Okay.
is also possible.
Yes.
Like has happened to the RTI Act, Urvashi, the Right to Information Act is now becoming more and more weak.
Yes. So then that again, the need for, I think, awareness. That is another issue that needs to be highlighted. Because if we become complacent, then it's sure to slip back, right? Like you said.
Yeah, right. Now, as I said, awareness is increasing. And as I said, the good news about the consumer protection scenario is that the laws are being improved and tightened rather than being, diluted and made useless. This is in spite of business lobby working against it. One of the factors that we've not been able to achieve against the business/lawyers lobby is to get lawyers out of the system. We argued that, look, even family courts and labor courts, lawyers are not allowed. So why do you need them here? But anyway, we could not succeed.
But thank you, Mr. Mehta, for putting things in perspective for all of us. And we look forward to more such interactions with you. And hope the viewers will
and my
find
colleagues.
Yes, all your colleagues, absolutely. So thank you very much.